let me know when we're okay to roll. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you had a lovely lunch. Managed to get some time. Had a few sessions already, which have been good. Some really, really good setups already. So, a bit about me. My name is Jason Wynn, Principal Technology Strategist at Content and Cloud. Been working voice and video and collaboration for like circa 2007. You come on in. Since around 2007. Been working in Anger. I've integrated in the likes of Mitel and Cisco and Avaya and Nortel, created the voice propositions within Vodafone, voice proposition within BT, work with some talented people who are in this room as well, and migrating, working well within the likes of different types of technology that we have within Microsoft as well. So really, really fortunate being here for as long as I have and doing for as long as I have. One of the first globally awarded MVPs, specializing teams. Hopefully will get renewed again. This will be my 5th year into it. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at jwin, likewise LinkedIn. And then I tend to write and blog from jolly.us, which is an organization that I've created with my partner and I. But today we're going to go through how do we get the most out of Microsoft Teams, and how do we build out that understanding of what Teams is and how Teams works around this voice and those voice aspects. And so let it be a relatively fluid thing. Let us go ahead and bring together any questions. I'll leave some time at the end for a Q&A as well. But quickly, what is Teams and how do we work it? So natively, we know that Teams is a communication platform. It allows us to bring together things such as chat. It allows us to bring together meetings and calling. But it goes beyond that. We can collaborate. We can work together within the same document and work together. So hopefully I'm explaining this in a British analogy as teaching my grandmother to suck eggs. Everybody in this room should understand that we can kind of work together on a document. We can work together. We can build things into apps where we're seeing some massive growth within the app section is Azure Communication Services, ACS, and we're going to see that to grow and grow and grow. Another place we're going to see much more customization and extensions into it is around Dynamics. So we're going to start to see things like Dynamics Contact Center, and right now it's limited into customer services, but in reality is that's going to carry on. It's going to grow and grow and grow. So those of you who work within the collaboration space, particularly around contact centers, figure out how that's going to be your strategy going forward, what's going to be your method of taking and bringing that business still in. So right now we can bring those into the store, but in reality is that we're going to see more of that growth into Dynamics 365. And then where do we take this going forward and how do we manage it? We all work within the same place, which is Microsoft Teams Admin Center, or is colloquially known as TAP, or TAC. You can come in. Do I need to close it?
No, she's there.
Bring in a trolley. Oh, I love it. I'm like mid-swag sesh. So that brings us kind of where that's like a background aspects of what we do with Teams and how Teams brings everything in. Likewise, we want to work collaboratively, but we don't care what we work on, right? We want to be able to work from anything from as ancient as a Windows 7 device into mobile, into web, whether it's Edge or Chrome, as long as it's Chromium-based, Mac OS, Android, iPhone. The key thing here is the code is 98% the same regardless of what your physical endpoint is. That's essential. I'll spring into that in a moment, why that's essential for us. But purely around the voice aspects and how we tie things into voice is that voice is growth, not just like marginally growth, it's huge. And we saw Jason, the other Jason, that less important Jason on stage earlier talk about the exponential growth. This is it. The voice is growing and growing and hugely and hugely. And the way and the rate in which it's been growing is because of the events that have happened in the last 2 years is just continuing to go. But we take us back. So this is where we're seeing things going, but where have we come from? So this is what Telephony used to look like. And I've seen these, I've worked on these telephone systems for ages and ages and ages, and I've seen them in like basements. I've had to work in ladies' toilets. I've had these things everywhere. But we had a telephone. It was like a clunky piece of plastic. We had to cable that bad boy up. And then we had that went to like a patch panel, which also was like in the ladies' toilets. And you think, what's going on, world? What's born Britain? What's this world about? And then it gave us PSTN. So that gives the base level of what telephony was. But people don't want that. They want to be able to have a single service provider. They want to be able to bring things together into dial-in conferencing, web-based, want into instant messaging, collaboration, all those things that we have, and bring it into it. So how do we do that? And what do we need to do? Is that we're modernizing our communications. And we're seeing that hybrid has become the new way of working. The likelihoods of I'm going to call Elon Musk a bit of a dinosaur, but anybody that tells you that you have to go back into the office to work, to be productive, is crazy. Hybrid is absolutely the way we're going to see it, and voice is going to lead the way how we're going to do it as well. And we're going to evolve it, and we're going to take all those things on, and we're going to make things super simple for us. And then one of the last piece is pressures on IT budgets and resources. It's like, take it away. Blokes don't want to go into the ladies' toilets. Take it away. Then again, I don't think that women want to go in the other way either, so safe is safe. But what's going on? 1 billion minutes, 1 billion phone calls made a month within Microsoft Teams. So that's huge. It's growing, right? We took it from the likes of Skype when Microsoft acquired it for 1.8 a couple of years ago, and it's just grown and grown and grown and grown. And it's astronomical. Where we see Teams and where we see the collaboration going any further, and we're seeing 250 million active users every month. 180 million people are using Teams phones every day. And what we're doing now is we're making, like I said a minute ago, billion calls. Microsoft a leader within the UCAS, and again, fourth leader on Forrester, and we'll go through that again. And where we continue to grow those areas is astronomical. Again, you want to go back? You want to grab that? Yeah, so where we're seeing growth within it, and it's not that Microsoft are kind of mid-quadrant. We're absolutely leading the pack of what we need to do within this, and the growth, and again, year upon year upon year, where they reside within the Magic Quadrant. Again, the total economic survey from Forrester says exactly the same thing, that we're seeing 185% annual growth, a return on investment, ROI, and 1.25 hours spent each week is ultimately saved, and that's saved from simple reasons. I don't have to go and load up my 8x8 app or my Ring Central app. I can stay within Teams and keep it together. I could tie this into my Dynamics platform and bring all these things together. You can see the growth and the understanding and the popularity of what's happening with keeping things within the Microsoft Eco Center grow and grow, grow. And likewise, where we usually see the payback and the ROI is ultimately approximately 3 months. That depends on the core functionality where we need to build things into, but ultimately is around 3 months. So calling, how do we do it? What do we need to do? How do we build these things together? Ultimately, what we need to do is be able to pull, I thought you'd bring more swag. I thought what we'll ultimately do is bring in these technology into, the first step is ultimately license the user. And so we make these calls, we enable that functionality, and what you'll see then is the ability to spin up that icon within it. So we see that phone ability come in. Once we allow that to happen, we can add the additional functionality and features. We'll see the ability to have the dial pad come into things, see that spin up as well within any sort of mobile phones. But how do we go? What does that mean? Well, I've got that dial pad, and I have the ability to make phones, but how do I go about doing that? What's the methods of doing that? And that's what we're talking about, is taking that future step, taking things to the next level, and what we do that through. And this is a Microsoft slide deck, because you can see that the Teams calling plan is quite bigger than everything else. But calling plans, you can land it through calling plans, Operator Connect, and direct routing. And we'll go to those a little bit more in a bit more detail in a moment. But ultimately allows us to give us the fluidity to choose how we want to bring our calling into Teams. In addition to that, we have the ability to have a single management console within the Teams Admin Center, and we can build that into it, assign numbers, control it, manipulate, do whatever we want to be able to do it, assign policies, call routes, extensions, call part, whatever functionality and policies we want to be able to build into it, we do it through the Teams Admin Center. We don't have to go through a third party or tool or bring it in. It's all done there. Likewise, I want to manage, I want to maintain, I want to understand how Teams is working. So I've got customers now who are using the call quality dashboard and integrations into it to troubleshoot troubleshoot their network. So they have a system that goes and they've ultimately uploaded the subnets and the network information within Teams. Teams is ultimately grabbing that information and relaying it between the two. We can see when their access points are flagging. So that goes then, we can go raise a ticket off of ServiceNow. ServiceNow uploads and tells them that they've got a connection back and that their access points are working right. It's a nice way of finding out that real-time communications requires a real-time network that works properly, and at least Teams is reporting back that it has or hasn't got a fault. So one of the methods that we're using with our own customers to find that out. In addition, we can tie in Power BI and utilize the Power BI dashboards. So one caveat I'll have, Power BI dashboards, they're in progress, right? They're working in progress. So I can't stand on the validity of what the Power BI dashboards are giving you. However, they're a good place to start. It's a good place to look. If you have the requirements to take things even further to analytics of what you have within Teams, I would certainly recommend a third-party solution and be able to pull that content through, to pull that more regularly than perhaps the Power BI dashboards do. But again, the CQD is a phenomenal place to start to see holistically how your Teams voice traffic is working, whether you've got network issues. Likewise, something else you can do within the CQD is be able to apply this into hardware. So say you've got a physical piece of hardware, so say you're running on a Surface Pro. You can tell the system that you're using Surface Pros, it grabs that information from all the endpoints that are running that, and then you can pull that back. So if you have a Surface Pro and you update your drivers for half the community, but you realize that going forward that that driver isn't working, it'll flag that for you. It'll say, by the way, everybody on this driver is having this fault that's causing this problem. So you can upload that in there and find out what's your building information and what's your machine information and pull that all in. So that takes us through how we understand how the holistic voice Microsoft Teams phone works. Now we talk about into kind of more the nitty-gritty of how we get that phone to ring. So up to now we're talking about what's the PBX. Now how do I get the PSTN to work? So there's three areas within that. We've got direct routing, and direct routing then allows us to give us a highly customizable. We can run or host our own SBCs, our session border controllers. We can bring that in. Operator Connect is coming up, and we're seeing that as quite limited at the moment, but again, there's a few providers out here who are offering Operator Connect within different geographies, and with Operator Connect will allow you to bring that all those telephone numbers seamlessly into Teams, and then you have the ability to have calling plans, which you buy, you license, you acquire from Microsoft, and that brings it natively into Teams, and you use, well, within the UK, use Colt Communication, and then that brings it into your UK data centers, which are Welwyn Garden City, Cardiff, and County Durham. So that breaks into there, and then distributes it out across the UK wherever we may be. So calling plans are ultimately, it's simple. I buy my 12 pounds license. It gives me the ability to make X amount of calls a minute. I can apply custom, not custom, I can buy my own domestic, small, medium, large, or international packages, small, medium, large, and new markets are continuously being added in. And the growth of it, to be fair, is growing substantially. Now, why doesn't Microsoft just go and say, I own X data center, I've got relationships in, I don't know, Tibet. Why? So as soon as you announce that you're a telco provider, your taxation rights become differently. So it's not that technically Microsoft can't provide telco services anywhere. The reality is there has to be an appetite for it, or you're going to be taxed for it. So calling plans are rapidly provisioned. It allows us to bring those numbers in. We can port numbers in. We raise something called an LOA, or letter of authority. Allows us to bring things into it. We assign a telephone number in. We tell it which location we're calling from, so that way if I dial 112 or 999 or 911, whatever series of 3 digits that get you the police, that will work. Again, we want to make sure the long-distance international rates are appropriate for us, and we want to make sure that we have enough minutes. So I'll tie on that in a minute, pun intended. what do we need to do? So it's a standalone license. We buy Teams Phone, was approximately $8 US, and then the calling plan is 12. And so within that, we can have those services. So that gives me the base level of Teams Phone. That allows me to use Microsoft as a calling. I can receive phone calls. I can make outbound phone calls. Everything comes together. Likewise, by base level, I have the ability to buy a domestic, international, and build off of that. And then at the end, here's a little trick, a Brucey bonus for you guys that live around here. Brucey bonus, if I buy a domestic plan, I can buy consumption billing and top up if I don't want to buy an international plan. So what do I mean by that? I could go spend the base level of 120 minutes on a domestic, buy the increased level of licensing for the consumption billing, and I can make those outbound phone calls rather than buying a big international bundle. Now the other key thing is that little point at the bottom is quite important. I only pay for outbound phone calls. I don't pay for inbound. So I can have as many inbound calls as I want until my poor little headphones about to give up life. Doesn't matter, as long as I have the ability to handle those calls outbound. That's all it cares about. In addition, it's pooled across the whole lot. So if I buy 120 minutes and times 10 people, I've got 1,200 minutes for the whole group of people. It is regional. So if I buy this for another organization outside the UK or outside of Europe, then you're only limited to what you have the ability to have within that. So if one person uses 10 minutes, another uses, 900 minutes, nobody cares. It all works out. It's kind of a flush. So where are we applying those services to? And we've seen this growth, and it's growing and growing and growing every year. So that's a list of where I can buy licenses from at the moment. So we can see where we're going to and where we have it from. And so we can see those little red locations are where we're going to be applying those services into and growing out of now. So that's growing and growing and growing. And again, I don't have a list where we're going to see next. Well, nothing that we could declare here, but it's just continuing to grow. Direct routing. Direct routing allows us to work within the ecosystem, bring complex situations back home. So what do I mean by that? I can take a telecom provider just about anywhere within the world, as long as it provides SIP technology, bring it into a hosted data center, into a SBC that I own or a third party owns, and I can bring that functionality in. In addition, you use direct routing when things are complex. So what do I mean by complex? If I have the requirements to have a contact center, as we're not yet in Dynamics, contact center will allow us to bring that functionality natively into Teams. So I can bolt into my telephone solution via the SBC into Microsoft Teams. Likewise, what if I have the requirements for a compliance recording, or if I have the requirements for a trunk side recording? I can then tie those things in natively into Teams, and I don't have to worry about the complexities of having that out. I can off-source that, or I can set it up myself, or I can set up the functionality within Azure. I can set up the SBCs within Azure. And the key thing here is whenever you have locations outside of what we saw here, you go direct routing, because it makes things simpler. Unless, of course, you have a relationship with Operator Connect, and we'll touch on that in a moment. But ultimately, direct routing takes the complexity out of it, makes it simpler for your end customers, brings things into it, so that way we can have a single location to make and receive phone calls. Likewise, I also have the ability to have SBA. So what SBA, or Survivable Branch Appliance, does is takes you ultimately from 99.99% uptime to another 9, just to make things more complicated, 99.999% up. And what that allows us to do, have local residual backup if I have to make and receive phone calls, very limited functionality within Microsoft Teams. Then I can have a SBA provide that service to us, to build it out within a local data center. It could be a physical or virtual device. I just saw Ribbon walk into the room as well, and absolutely they have an SBA, and we can apply this in, build it up, and then break it out and give you additional functionality that you need to have within the registration of physical devices, have the ability to bring all that information into Teams and have that break out locally. And basically it's having like an offline version of Teams for your telephony regionally. Operator Connect. So Operator Connect allows us to have the ability to tie an incumbent supplier that's on the whitelist, that's gone through approval to be part of your environment. So what you do is you go into the Teams Admin Center. Remember the Team Admin Center that does everything? Teams Admin Center that brings it all together, allows us to then go and add that functionality from your incumbent into Teams. So you go in, you apply what is your username, your location, where your billing information, basically the same information you would supply into a LOA, a letter of authority, and that brings it into your Microsoft Teams Admin Center, and then you have the rights to make outbound, inbound phone calls. And so if you have a relationship and you have a outstanding amount of time relating to the commercial agreement you have with your provider, Operator Connect's a great way of bringing that in. So if I have a AT&T environment and I want to be able to make sure that we have the ability to, I've got 2 years remaining, Operator Connect's a good way to go, bring them in, be able the ability to make those phone calls and have a single one-to-one relationship between the two. Something that we're seeing coming is Operator Connect Mobile. I'm seeing a lot of this lately. So when you live in the life of world of Teams, often what we have is two numbers. I've got my mobile number, and I've got my Teams number, which is ultimately a desk phone or something I use on Teams. I can make outbound phone calls, but I had a customer just last week. How do I go and manage that so that way I only want my mobile number? So this is it. So in the near future, circa Q3, Q4 of this year, we're going to see this come alive and the relationships that will be built out of it. So what if I only want a single number each? I want to have a 07 number or a US number or whatever it may be, but I want to be able to have that one number rather than multiple numbers. So for multiple providers, I don't want to have a relationship with X. I only want a relationship with O2 or Voda or Verizon. So what will happen in this shortly is we'll be able to bring that into the real world. So we can have a single number, and what happens is, for those of you that remember the SBC speak and Telephony, it will dual fork. So it'll be race contentions between what happens. So fork to your mobile, fork to your PC, your Teams client, whichever picks up first, there'll be race contentions to that. I'll be able to pull through. I don't know how they'll handle voicemail yet. That'll be interesting to see. But that's how that will work so far. Who's spinning up and who's working? So right now, BT, Rogers out of Canada, Swisscom, Telia, and Verizon. So those are who the early onboarding partners have been to be able to prove it. Now that will continue to grow and grow and grow, just like we've seen with Operator Connect. The likes of that, we think we've got 31 different providers with Operator Connect, and once this becomes more and more active, we're going to see that relationship build out even further. So going forward, what do we got? So we're seeing the functionality grow, being able to pull things. So this is up to 2021. We'll pull things into 2022 shortly. But again, what do we do? What do we need to have? Obviously, Operator Connect. Some people will roll in their grave what we have around what Microsoft call Apple CarPlay support, but it's very limited. But obviously, the functionality continues to grow and grow. Teams devices. So we still have a massive place within what's going on. So many, many requirements for people out there to still have, we split across premium, lower cost, and legacy phones. We have the ability to tie in old handsets, Cisco, some audio codes. Different providers allow us to tie those in. We can use SIP Gateway to provide those functionality in if people wanted to not depreciate those assets and remove them completely. Likewise, we can remotely provision devices, so we can now come in, apply our MAC address into it, and then apply that functionality into what we have within Microsoft Teams. So I can soft provision a phone before it goes out. And for those of you who've done any networking and have seen Meraki side of things, this is what we're doing. We're taking and applying information in, provisioning it, sending out the device. When it comes in, we can remotely provision it. And for those of you who saw Michael Tresler's piece earlier today, I can even remotely assign who's going to log into that device, assign it to them, and log it in before they actually go to that desk. So I can provision the device, make sure it's ready to go, ready to run, and we're utilizing where we're working within Microsoft Teams before they even have that desk live. Likewise, Teams displays, we're going to see a new way of working. So when we start working hybrid again and bring these in, Yealink are working on a new product that should be, it's gone GA, but it's not globally available. They can't manufacture them fast enough. And what that allows us to do is have the ability to have a Teams display on your desk, be able to go in, sign in, use it as a local device, like a huddle space, and have a video conference on it as its own. But if I wanted to plug in the USB-C connection into it, it allows me to spin that that up, have my video conferencing through it, likewise tie into a headset, and have a full functioning workspace within it. Microsoft are changing how we're going to be able to buy stuff and how we're going to buy things. So the new Teams admin will allow us to purchase objects directly from Teams. So if I don't want to go out to a third-party provider, I want to keep things super simple within my organization. I can go within the admin portal and start ordering things natively. Likewise, new ways, so on the left, you're going to see how the new hybrid meetings are working, and then on the new piece, what we wanted to say, like it's an example of the front row, and tie all these things together, keep it seamless, keep the voice things working. Likewise, if I wanted to have things really, really complicated on the right-hand side, from Graham, who's here today, I can have it locked down to particular people within the meeting. And like on top of that, we're having the ability to have things in with Operator Connect conferencing. So if I want to spin my conferencing service from a meetings perspective, I could do that too. So quickly, if we got any questions, I'm happy to have them.
Quick question.
Any cues?
Get to catch me.
Hi, thanks for the session.
Thank you.
One question, what are your thoughts about voice-enabled channels? I think Microsoft popped it out last year, and I have a feeling there's not been a lot of development on it.
I'm a bit hard of hearing, so help me out again.
No, sorry, what are your thoughts about the voice-enabled channels in Teams?
The voice-enabled channels? So being able to make phone calls via channels within Teams, do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, that's been there for a very, very long time. We can be able to make channels and utilize things through secure channels and all sorts, being able to break out meetings. The meeting before this, there are about 4 or 5 different questions on how do we handle managing the different classification of questions, like how do we manage channels and secure channels and how do we break that out. So we're going to continue to do that. Likewise, if you wanted to utilize, you could use channels to make and receive phone calls from an auto attendant. So you get within the auto attendant and call queues, you can have that triage down too, so you can manage the channels rather than managing the call queue as well. So Microsoft are growing, continuing to grow that all.